guys, it's Kevin again, my review for Hustlers. And what Hustlers is essentially about is we center on our main character, Dorothy. She is someone who is really struggling to find work. She has a grandmother that she's trying to take care of, and basically she ends up stumbling across this strip club one day, and very quickly is taken over the wing of one of the leaders there, Ramona, who gets her involved in becoming a stripper there and things like that, and they start to take clients. And basically, we follow throughout the film as Dorothy tries to get deeper into this, but eventually having to make some really harsh choices because of this lifestyle, and basically eventually having to do some really irrational things, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Hustlers, I'll just be honest with you guys, I had zero interest in this film. This film looked obnoxious, it looked annoying, it just looked like something that I would really hate, and something that just wasn't made for me at all, and I really wasn't expecting all that much from this film. The cast here pretty much ranged from people like Constance Wu, that I really do like, to actresses like Jennifer Lopez, who I have yet to see in anything good, and Cardi B being in there. I mean, I just really wasn't that excited for this film, but after seeing it, this is a far more fascinating film than I really was expecting. Hustlers is easily my biggest surprise of the entire year. That really is a far more compelling look at the world of stripping than I really was expecting going in, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And like I said, going into this film, that was very much a mixed bag for me. I didn't really think that a lot of these actresses were all that great, but I think everyone really gave a strong performance here. Let's first talk about Constance Wu, who, you know, last year, Crazy Rich Asians, she really blew me away, and I've pretty much been looking out for her ever since, and this is another really strong performance from her. Dorothy's the kind of character that, yes, she is doing a lot of things that aren't all that great. She's very much on the wrong side of things throughout the movie, but you also really do feel for her in that way, and a lot of that is because of Wu's acting. She's able to put a lot of emotion into this role, and you're able to really see where Dorothy is coming from in that moment, and she really does go through a pretty big arc here, and Wu does a really great job with showcasing that. I thought she gave a very strong performance here. You really are kind of with her throughout the entire film, and I was very impressed by her acting here. Wu, I think, is just such a fantastic actress, and it's performances like this that really do show why. But easily the big standout in this movie, and probably one of the most surprising performances of the year, is that of Jennifer Lopez, who I have maintained before, I kind of just thought was a shit actress. Anything she was in, I just thought she was either really bad or really laughable, and I didn't really think that was going to change here, but clearly this film shows I have vastly misjudged her, because this is easily the best that I have ever seen her. She blew me away in this film. I thought she was fantastic here, and Ramona is the kind of role that I think she really was born to play in that way. She's very ruthless, she really loves to call the shots, but she also does a lot of things that, yeah, are very irrational in that way. But you also really do just love seeing Lopez just relish in this role, and it's the kind of role that I think is very much a career-defining performance that I really hope she starts to take more of. I don't want to see her in stuff like The Boy Next Door anymore. I don't want to see her in stuff like Second Act. She needs to do more roles like this. This is where she shines the most, and her chemistry with Constance Wu especially is so good here. These two have probably one of the best character pairings of the entire year. I thought they worked so well together, and a lot of that really is due to Lopez and just how much effort she really did pour into this role. You could tell the passion that she really did have here. It's just seeping off the screen, and I just couldn't believe how good she really was. I heard a lot of people say that, like, she's Oscar worthy, and I kind of thought that was laughable, but coming out of this film, honestly, yeah, I could see it happening. I could very much see her getting an Oscar nomination for this, because I really do think she was that good here. It's easily the most surprising performance of the entire year, and I think she just completely killed it here, and I really do hope, like I said, moving forward, she's able to take more challenging roles like this one, because she really did shine here for sure. And then the rest of the cast also does do a really strong job. Keke Palmer and Lili Reinhart, both of them were very strong here. I think the four core characters worked very well together. They had a really great dynamic to them, and I very much did appreciate that. Julia Stiles is very good as this reporter who is interviewing the girls throughout it. I thought she did a very strong job. And then for those who are worried, because I know this is going to come up, Cardi B, is she in this movie? Yes, but only really for 5 minutes. So if you're really that annoyed about Cardi B being in this movie, it's like a blink and you'll miss it type role. Like, she has barely anything to do here, and I'm glad, because I'm really not a fan of her. I don't think that she's a good person at all. But again, I mean, what she brought here, she did bring a nice levity, I guess, but she doesn't even really have that much to do. So if you're worried about Cardi B being in here, she's not even in it that much. Neither is Lizzo. Those two are very much cameos that were just plastered onto the main cast. But other than that, I mean, the rest of the cast does some really strong work here. Madeline Brewer gives another excellent performance in a role that I really don't want to spoil because they didn't really get into it much in the trailer, but I thought she did a really strong job. Really, everyone did a really great job in this movie, way better than I would have ever expected in a film like this for sure. But now I really want to get into the directing and the writing here, which is by far, I think, the best thing about this entire film. I mean, the directing here, I really wasn't expecting all that much from it. With a film like this, you expect it to have a certain tone, but Lorene Scafaria, I think, really turned this film on its head in a really great way, and I really love what she ended up doing here for sure. I think she was able to convey this film in a far more authentic way than you really would expect it to be. There's nothing about this film directing wise that feels like it's trying to evoke a sense of, you know, it's trying to just exploit strippers and things like that. No, there really is a lot of care put into this, especially when it comes to the more dramatic moments, which I think Scafaria directs effortlessly, and I think she overall just did a really strong job here. But it's her writing that really impressed me. This film is far different than I really was expecting. I was expecting a much more, like I said, over the top and obnoxious film, but it's actually really authentic. I would honestly compare it to something like Goodfellas, in the sense where that film shows the highs and lows of being a gangster. This film very much applies that to the world of stripping, and the film is very Martin Scorsese-esque in that way. It has a narrator throughout it. It is non-linear. There's a lot of elements in that way. You can very much see that Scafaria kind of was inspired by Scorsese. It never feels like she's copying off of him, though. The film always has its own story to tell, and I think it does a really good job with that. And for some, the story might be a little bit jarring, because the film starts off, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. You get to see, you get to see Dorothy, or Destiny, however, whoever you want to call her, because Destiny is her stripper name, and she does kind of go by that, but her real name is Dorothy. She basically gets to explore the world, see all the possibilities, you know, the money and things like that, and all that stuff is actually very fascinating. The way that these girls entice the men, the way that they get them to just throw money at them, and the way it's going to help them in their professional lives, you know, in their real lives, I thought was actually really interesting. There's a great scene very early on where you have Ramona, Jennifer Lopez's character. She's kind of, she's kind of guiding Dorothy on how to get men to pay a certain amount of money. And I thought it was just really interesting the way they did that for sure. And I really did appreciate that. And the film does do a really good job with fleshing out most of these characters. Dorothy, for example, is not just some stripper that needs a job. No, she has this grandmother that she's taking care of, who really is her only close relative in that way. Eventually, she has a baby that she needs to take care of, or Ramona, who also has kids that she needs to take care of and things like that, and doesn't really have a very stable life. And that's the thing, a lot of these characters, there's nothing real glamorous about their life. A lot of it is just for show in that way. When you really get to see who they are, these are not necessarily the best people. I mean, Lili Reinhart's character, literally her introduction is that she's been like kicked out of her house and things like that, and she needs this as a way to make money. This is her only source of making money in that way, and because of that, you really do see the desperation that all of these women have, especially once we get to the second act of the film, when the stock market ends up crashing and there's like this huge financial crisis that goes on, you know, from 2008. It's devastating to watch, but the lengths that these women have to go to, again, it can be really hard to get behind for sure, but because of you understanding where they are, you're that much more riveted, and you start to see things go down go down a dark path for sure. Things take a much more significantly darker turn in that way, but the film feels so much more real because of that. It's not trying to make stripping look like this glamorous choice. No, it's like, yes, they enjoy doing it, but it's also the only thing they can do at this point. There's a scene with Dorothy where she tries to get another job and she's failing miserably. She can't seem to find work anywhere else, and you realize they kind of need this. So even moments where they're doing things that are pretty much unforgivable, and they're doing things that I feel like in other movies I would have a problem with, here I actually didn't have a problem with it. It worked very well for me, and I think they did a really good job with telling the story, but also just showing the bond that all these girls have, especially between Dorothy and Ramona. I mean, it's a very interesting bond because on one hand, yes, these two do genuinely care for each other, but there is an aspect of Ramona that is very manipulative and toxic in that way, and you're wondering why Dorothy really does depend on her. But as the film goes on, you also really do start to care for them, and I think the film just does a really good job with getting into all that. Again, it can be hard to really communicate in a way that doesn't lose your audience completely, but I think that Scafaria did a really good job with that here for sure, and I was very impressed by. And yes, the film does get you to care for these girls, but it is also at no point trying to champion or glorify the actions that they're doing. And that's really nicely intercut with this subplot that's going on with Dorothy talking to this reporter. And you know something has gone down. This reporter is very eager on getting into the facts and really starts to grill Dorothy towards the end of it. And once you see the things they've done, you begin to understand why. You begin to understand why she feels this way. The reporter is very much the audience in that way, and I think they do a really good job with getting us to not rationalize, but understand where they were coming from. You're never against them necessarily, but there are things where, yeah, they very much crossed a line in that way, and I think the film did a really good job with that for sure. The cinematography in this film is outstanding. I mean, the scenes in the strip club especially, you feel like you're right there. They do a really great job with that cinematography-wise. The look and feel of it is just so great, and especially just the different time periods. I mean, this film goes from 2007 to like 2014, and you really do feel that that time. They do a really good job with conveying it for sure, giving a very specific look and feel, and I really did appreciate that, and I think the cinematography was very well done. The soundtrack here also is just fantastic. The music choices are so on point, and they do a really great job reminding you that this is a period piece and that this did actually happen. And again, similar to the way that in a Scorsese film, it doesn't really have a score because it uses the soundtrack as a score, Hustlers is very much like that as well, and I think they did a really great job with that. And then the editing, I thought this film, for the most part, was really well paced, although that is where we start to get into one of my negatives. I do think that the first act was a little bit rushed. Mainly that's when, you know, stuff is the business is starting to flourish and things like that, and Dorothy really is starting to embrace being a stripper. That whole side of the film did feel a little bit rushed to me. I think they might have benefited from a longer runtime, but for the most part, I do think this film is very well paced overall. I think that there were some really cool stuff they did editing-wise that I don't want to get into, especially in the third act, but I was very impressed by that for sure. In terms of negatives, though, aside from the first act feeling a little bit rushed, I do feel that some of these strippers weren't as well fleshed out as they could have been. Keke Palmer and Lili Reinhart, they do give them something for sure. Like, we established that Keke Palmer's character, Mercedes, you know, her boyfriend's in jail and she needs the money to pay for it, but I feel like we should have seen a little bit more there, and especially when it comes to Lili Reinhart. I mean, aside from the fact that her parents have kicked her out, we know next to nothing about her, and I think that her introduction into the story just felt a little rushed to me. I think they could have fleshed her character out a little bit more, and I was just, as much as I cared about them, because like I said, I did really come to like all of these characters, and I did like where they ended up going with them for sure. I thought that those two could have been fleshed out a little bit more for sure. And like I said, the relation between Ramona and Dorothy, as fascinating as it was, that also did feel a little rushed. I think they could have done just a little bit more with that. Also, the reporter character, as much as I understand why she needs to be here, she never really feels like more than that. She's pretty much just the generic reporter. That's not really a huge complaint, but it was kind of hard to tell at first what her role really was going to be in the film. But other than that, I really did love Hustlers quite a bit. I think this is a huge surprise. It's far more fascinating than I really was expecting. The performances are just off the charts, especially from Constance Wu and Jennifer Lopez. Those two really are the big standouts here. The rest of the cast also does some really strong work, but those two really do stick out here. I think the writing is really great. It's very sharp in a way that I wasn't expecting. It has a lot to say about the stripping industry that I don't think that you are quite prepared for, and it's definitely a far more darker film than I was expecting for sure, and one that doesn't just try to glorify their actions. It very much does try to show how wrong all of this was, but also that this did happen, and it covers it in a very accurate way, and overall, I was just very impressed by this film. Hustlers is easily the biggest surprise of the entire year. It's pretty crazy that I see the most disappointing film of the year and the most surprising film of the year in the same week, but that's where we are here, and I can't believe I'm actually going to give this film this grade, but I am going to give Hustlers overall a B+. So overall, guys, in my review of Hustlers, most guys saw this movie overall, different your thoughts, and I can't believe that I love this as much as I did. I can't believe I'm actually recommending this movie, but yeah, I think this is definitely worth checking out for sure. It's the perfect, it's just the perfect example of not judging a film by its trailer, and I think this film very much did a good job at presenting the story in a way that I didn't think they were going to, but either way, guys, for my review of Hustlers, most guys saw this movie overall, different your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.